Alanis Morissette is a Canadian pop singer and songwriter born on June 1st, 1974. She was raised Catholic while having a Jewish ancestry. She is currently a practicing Buddhist. Her school life was a very religious one, but she was devoted to her spiritual path. She took up piano lessons at age 6 and dance lessons at age 7. And she was a songwriter starting at the age of 9. When she was in junior high, she appeared in 5 episodes of the sketch comedy show You Can't Do That on Television. I say all of this because she was raised on a very heavily creative background, even though she also lived in a very religious background while she was growing up. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to 1993, where she would go on to begin working on her first internationally released album, Jagged Little Pill, released on June 13th, 1995. Just to make sure that no one corrects me in the comment section, I said first internationally released album. This was not her first release. It was a commercial success beyond all odds, where Alanis was rejected by every record label she and Glenn Ballard approached except for Maverick Records. This album was so critically acclaimed, topping the charts in 13 countries. It is also one of the best-selling albums of all time, making Alanis the first Canadian to achieve double diamond sales, 9 Grammy Award nominees, winning 5 of them, making her the youngest winner of Album of the Year award. Okay, holy shit. If I went on about the accomplishments of not just this album, but also Alanis Morissette, we would be here all day, and I just want to get to the focus of the video. As an album, Jagged Little Pill is a pretty fucking good album. I can confirm this. I've listened to the album, so I know it's really fucking good. It is one of those albums you absolutely need to listen to from beginning to end. I'm not kidding. It's clearly my favorite album of her discography, and my bias is showing. The songs are excellently written, especially in the fashion that it was written in 1 to 2 takes with a drum machine in the San Fernando Valley. Believe me, I've done exactly this before with my own unsuccessful music career. The album turned out fucking phenomenal. Her lyrics also complement the tone of the songs in the album. There is a certain tone to her music that feels watery, almost like you're drowning. This is apparent even in her more aggressive and upbeat songs on the album, like You Oughta Know and You Learn. The song, Hand in My Pocket, strangely reminds me of the film Ferngully. I'm not sure why. Lyrically, she is very consistent with the patterns she uses in her poetic storytelling. Every verse has a hook at the beginning that repeats throughout the song, sometimes with a little variety. You can say that this is standard songwriting, but I don't care. Leave. This album is fucking brilliant, and I will not be having music nerds flexing their superiority complex in my fucking comment section. Piss off, I don't want you here. I can say that I've listened to this album at a super young age, when I was still in a car seat while my mom was driving me along the California coastline. The warmth in Alanis's voice while looking into the Pacific Ocean, seeing that ocean for the very first time in my life, is one of the very earliest memories that I can recall. So yes, I'm very biased for this album, and I was literally raised to love this album. And now, you all have to sit here and listen to me talk about one of the songs on the album that is literally the most perfect song. It's not just perfect, it's underrated. The song is called Perfect. Yes, that was a joke. I like to speculate sometimes that Alanis may have cracked some jokes in the studio when recording this song with that specific wordplay in mind. But I don't think that she wrote this song and gave it that title for that reason. I will say, however, that I do think that it is the perfect song, both objectively and subjectively. So for the Alanis Morissette fan out there who says I shouldn't call any of her songs subjective or objectively perfect, well, you know what? This is just my video. I don't claim to be right, like, really ever. So it's okay to be wrong sometimes. This is one of those songs on the album that I don't think gets a lot of attention or mentioned a lot in the press, or even by the fans sometimes. That's not to say that people don't like the song. People do like the song. The crowd is out here covering this song and writing about it. But you don't hear the song getting mentioned at the same level as You Oughta Know and Ironic. But why am I putting the microscope on this song as opposed to other songs on that album? Well, my friends, my answer is gonna be subjective. It will be my own interpretation of the song based on what I know about Alanis and the lyrics that she has written. So let's start with the name. What does quote-unquote perfect even mean? If you are perfect at something, then you are flawless. You have every required and desirable element and qualities necessary to be the very best at something. If you are perfect, then you even maintain accuracy in your craft. Now, I think I know what people are going to say in the comment section. No one is perfect at anything. That's a really high standard to hold against someone. People can be really good at something, even proficient at their craft, but absolute perfection is not a reasonable bar to set for people. Well, if that's what you were typing in the comment section, then thank you, because that's exactly where I am going with this. Let's segue into this motherfucking video. In the very beginning of the song, Alanis opens with the beginning verse.
Sometimes it's never quite enough, and if you're flawless, then you're in my love.
This opening verse is setting the scene. Firstly, Alanis is not energetic at all. She is singing very soft, almost like her voice is barely cracking in her attempt to vibrate her vocal cords. In her choice of words, she is making it apparent that she is not singing the song from her perspective. The song is called Perfect, which means that if she were to be singing a song just about being perfect, the tone of the song wouldn't have been in a somber E major chord progression while telling the listener that if they're flawless, then they will win her love. If she was the one upholding that standard on the listener, it wouldn't fit the tone of the rest of her album, which has a plethora of songs about growing up and overcoming your challenges. No. This opening verse is setting the stage from the perspective of someone who is not her, who is not Alanis Morissette. It's almost like this is done very deliberately to paint a critical picture against the idea of perfection. What do I mean by that? Why don't we move on to some more verses?
Don't forget to win first place. Don't forget to keep that smile on your face.
At this point, it is plainly obvious the perspective she is singing from. You see, she wouldn't have her first kid until 2010, so she was not writing this song for any of her own children. She is not setting these expectations for her own kids. So then, this could mean that she is singing this song in the perspective of her own parents. It's very possible that maybe she is singing about another set of parents she witnessed growing up. It could be her friend's parents. That's definitely a possibility. But I want you to consider the following, especially coming from myself, a former Catholic like Alanis was. Being devoted to a Roman Catholic Church, especially when that belief system is bedrock into the family, there are extremely high expectations set from the parent to the child. Sometimes those expectations are set by the Catholic institution itself. One of my biggest criticisms of the Catholic institution is that there is a strong emphasis on honoring thy mother and father as stated in the Ten Commandments within Exodus. But it is also very rare when the church reciprocates those same values for the vice versa, the parent being held accountable to the child. It is almost kind of assumed that the parent giving birth to the child and giving the kid a roof is enough to warrant an authority that is not to be questioned and is automatically justified through that coercion. After all, there are plenty of birth parents who are abusive and cannot justify being a guardian. Various Catholic institutions maintain a consistent track record of child rape, victim blaming, coercively enforcing gender roles, indoctrinating bigoted views on sexual orientation, keeping biblical interpretation to a rather myopic scope, and overall failing to hold the church accountable for these really horrible things that it does. And if the parents follow this line of faith, it can reflect in their parenting of their children. I want to clarify that all of this is speculation. I don't know for sure if Alanis was abused by her family or not. I do not believe she holds these really awful views and behaviors. I don't know if she had these experiences with the church like I and millions of other victims have had with that institution. I only mention all of this as someone who came from the same religious lineage and is also a former Catholic. With that said, this song is setting a standard, probably from the parent's perspective, that standard being quote-unquote to win first place. There are a lot of things a parent could tell their child to win first place in: soccer, football, baseball, piano recitals, martial arts, golf, singing, a test at school, ballet, the science fair. The list is practically endless. Some people may say or argue that the parent telling their child to win first place might be a gesture of encouragement, meaning if that child gets second, third, or fourth place, they will still love that child even though they gave their all. Normally, that would make sense, and it would be somewhat of an acceptable answer. But do you remember what the song opened with? Sometimes is never quite enough. If you're flawless, then you'll win my love. This means that if the child is to win their parents' love, then they will need to win first place, not second place, not third place, not fourth place, first place. Okay, we're pretty knee deep into this analysis, and we're not going to fucking stop anytime soon. The next part of the song is where things start to get interesting.
Be a good boy. Try got to measure up. Make me prouder.
Be a good boy. Try a little harder. You've got to measure up and make me prouder. If we are to assume this is Alanis' mother or father saying this, then we would be talking about either Wade or Chad Morissette, her brothers. This is where the song gets very emotional, because at this point Alanis is using gendered language here, like be a good boy. Not only that, but she is highlighting aspects of patriarchy in the standard she is setting for this supposed boy in the song, saying that he needs to try harder, he needs to measure up and make the parents prouder, almost as if the parents is not already proud of their child, doing their damn hardest. A feminist would probably say that this is all a characteristic of patriarchy at play here. Men are expected to hide their emotions, masking their emotions to seem emotionless and vacant of genuine care for any given situation. This is indicated by the verse where Alanis says, quote, "Don't forget to keep that smile on your face." It is a really heartbreaking moment in the song, because the song is written with a very emotional tone, as explained earlier, but the point of view that she is giving is that of emotionless, almost discouraging emotional expression, that if you express emotions, you are not perfect. Before I continue, I just want to mention that if this video is putting you through distress, please feel free to pause the video and come back when you are feeling better. This song literally makes me cry, and as I have been writing this script, I have been listening to the song on repeat while I pick apart the words. So I'm very plainly going through a lot right now. So that doesn't mean you have to suffer alongside with me. Please pause the video if you'd like. I'll still be here. Let's just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, especially if you are empathetic to the themes in which I am discussing. Holy shit. On that note, I'm going to continue. The next set of verses goes like this.
Do I have to tell you to hurry up? With everything I do for you, the least you can do is keep quiet.
So this reinforces everything we've covered so far. Because instead of the parents setting expectations for the child, they are now telling the child that they have no faith in their success. They've already prepared for the scenario in which the child fails. This parent that Alanis is illustrating is almost willing to dispose of that kid if they don't succeed at winning first place. That if they don't conform to the parents' wishes for that child, then that child is worthless to them, and that child is worthless of love. This is a very cynical and callous view for the parent to have of their child. But there's one thing that this section of the song does differently than the rest of the song has done up to this point. It conveys sacrifice. While this song is very clearly painting the parent as the antagonist of this dynamic, it still has empathy for the parent. The part where the parent says, quote, "With everything that I do for you, the least you can do is keep quiet." There is at least a tiny sliver of an implication that the parent has made plenty of sacrifices for their child. I think everyone who has a child that they love dearly has made sacrifices in their lifestyle, their mental health and physical health, in their finances. Sometimes parents will swim oceans to ensure their child's wellness and happiness. Conversely, this particular line of the song could be an example of the parent gaslighting their child. Gaslighting is when one person presents a false narrative to another person, usually to get that second person to doubt their perception and to be misled for the gaslighter's benefit. However, it is also worth noting that gaslighting doesn't always come from a place of malice, though it is still very harmful. A lot of abusers genuinely believe that they are doing their best to be accommodating when that simply is not the reality of the situation, which means gaslighting can be either intentional or unintentional, regardless of how fucking awful the outcome is. So when it is a parent gaslighting a child, assuming that's what Alanis is conveying in her lyrics from the perspective of the parent to their son, we can make a pretty safe assumption that this is a form of abuse to make the child feel guilty for failing and not winning first place. It really is an unbalanced power dynamic here. The kid didn't consent to being born, let alone sentient. That child didn't ask to live this specific life where very little is allowed to change. And the response the parent has to any form of protest or change against all of these arbitrary standards is the least you can do is keep quiet. The next part of the song changes things up a little bit.
Be a good girl. You gotta try a little harder. That simply was not good enough to make us proud.
Okay, so not only is this similar to a set of verses from earlier referencing Alanis' use of repetition in her lyrics, but it is no longer the parent speaking to the boy, but now to this girl. We can assume that the parent's attention in this part of the song is directed at Alanis herself. One other key difference is the verse that goes, "That simply was not good enough to make us proud." This could indicate that the expectations are probably even higher than that of the boy, her brother, or the two brothers, if you will. If something was simply not good enough, it almost feels like the parents just didn't give a shit to begin with about her. But again, once again, I would like to remind you all in the audience that I may get things wrong about this analysis. That is just my own interpretation. Please don't eat my fucking brains alive in the comment section, please. But now we're about to get to the bridge, the climax of the song. This is where all of the emotional baggage we have been experiencing throughout the song is supposed to pay off. I believe it does so rather brilliantly.
I'll live through you, I'll make it what I live as. If you're the best, then maybe so am I. Compare to him, compare to her. I'm doing this for your own damn good. You'll make up for what I blow. What's the problem?
Wow. Oh my god. Where do we even begin? First of all, this is extremely intense. Throughout the song, it has been very melancholy, very chill, very just kind of like going down the road, just driving at maybe like 25 miles an hour. At this point, where we get to the bridge, we're going fucking 80 fucking miles an hour on Route 66 right here. The tone has literally accelerated almost to the point of a mental breakdown where Alanis is literally screaming at the microphone. This velocity paired with the words she is using, especially if we are assuming this is in the perspective of the parent, is a really hard pill to swallow. A lot of the time, families are built on the expectation that their children will do better and even surpass their parents, that the parent has learned some of the hardest lessons that there are to learn. So naturally, that parent's motive is to warn the child of the dangers and potentially fatal and traumatic mistakes. But the reality is that the child is still learning about the world for the very first time. Of course, parents should do everything they can to keep their children safe and happy and healthy. But the reality is that they cannot save them from everything. Children will need to make mistakes as well, and thus learn through trial and error. It's also worth noting that children sometimes come to conclusions that are different than the lessons that they learned from their parents, and they're different than the conclusions that their parents have made when they were learning these lessons in their adolescence. It's almost a very fearful reality that most parents in the world are afraid to admit, and sometimes that amount of sheltering of the child can be even more deadly. But that's the real damage here, folks. The parent's motive in all of this is to project their previous failings onto the child, and that is a battle for life and death for the parent's wishes to be conformed into the child's agenda, even if it means completely disregarding the thoughts, dreams, and emotions, as well as compromising that child's safety and aspiration, because that child is to be seen and not heard. If you love your child just the way they are, then aren't they already perfect? Okay, I'm getting emotionally exhausted, so I just want to get to the part I've been wanting to get to this entire video. Alanis Morissette is a cisgender woman, but listeners of the song can definitely relate to the content of the song itself. Of course, listeners can easily pick up on these themes in their first listen in some cases, but I want to express my own interpretation of how I perceived this song, my own experience with this song, and what it was like when I first heard it, as opposed to when I heard it as an adult. You see, Alanis Morissette's album, Jagged Little Pill, is a very upbeat album. It's very good. Like, I'm serious. Go listen to it when you're done listening to this fucking video. I swear to God, go listen to it. I'm not even fucking kidding. I was very young and I didn't know English at the time, but when this song came on, it completely juxtaposed from the rest of the album, especially during that car ride along the California beach. It was my first time that I ever felt an uncanny dread, but it was sung in such a way that it was almost like a soothing lullaby. Predictably, this made me cry as a baby, but in present day, after many years of not having listened to the song or album for that matter, after coming out as a non-binary lesbian trans woman, this song's impact is thousand-folded for me, because it feels really, really, really satisfying to know that I can relate to this more than I ever did before. When I hear the song, I think about the rejection of my own family that they have inflicted onto me, especially the family that expected me to be an altar boy in my local Catholic church. They were disappointed to learn that I was no longer a believer, that I had become an anarchist, that I became gay, transgender, non-binary, lesbian, etc. Every step I have taken in my life has deviated from their advice. Sometimes those steps were honest mistakes and I learned from them, while other times they were absolutely necessary for me to break away. Friends, thanks for coming around. I was working on this video since February of 2022, and I did upload this in June on my other channel. Please check out the Ko-Fi link in the description, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Share the video. Love you, Alanis.